Hi, it's Matt. So I've just finished running through a document on how to build a search-based employee directory that I was sort of part of. I didn't contribute nearly as much as some of the other folks. But this is a fantastic document. It's a great resource if you're a search geek like me. So let me run through that. Let me show you how to create the search-based employee directory from beginning to end with Office 365 or SharePoint on-prem. This is the document. It's called the Definitive Guide to Building Your Own Employee Directory with Office 365 and SharePoint. It was put together by Jeremy Thake at Hyperfish, and so you go to their site to download the directory and the code that I'll be showing you in this demo. I'm going to build it both in SharePoint on-prem as well as Office 365 so that I can show you some of the little differences that you might run into, but pretty much it's the same process. So let's dive into it. How do you know if you have the most recent copy of the guide? Well, the most recent copy of the guide, as far as I'm concerned, when you look at the contributors page with Jeremy and Mark and Michael and Julie, me, Agnes, Thomas, and Stacy, you'll see that my company name is Able Blue right there. That was one of the couple of typos that Jeremy and I fixed recently, but here we go. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to skip over the stuff about why you need an employee directory. You can read all of that stuff on your own. I'm just going to dive right in here to step one. And I'm just going to walk through each of the steps so that you can create your own employee directory. So right from the beginning of the guide, we try to tell you what you need to be able to do to create this employee directory. And right here, this is the first deal breaker. If you can't edit and add a page in the Search Center, you can't do this. You'll need somebody to add permissions for you to be able to do that in your Search Center. Now, quite often, this is a completely separate site collection, and folks don't necessarily know how to do that, so you may have to help. But I'm going to go ahead and move on. I have site contents, and in site contents, I'm going to go to the pages library. This is where all of the search results pages are. And I'm going to choose new document page. And right away, I see that SharePoint is blocking me. It's not allowing me to create a people search results page. Now I could create a regular search results page and then change all the web parts, but let me show you how we show you how to do it in the documentation. You go into site settings, you go into page layouts and templates, you scroll down here and you find the people search results page. So right there it says people search, choose OK. That means that that's now approved for allowing you to have that as a page template. So now I can go back into site contents, I can go into pages, and I can create a new document, and this time I have that people search page layout available to me. Call this employee directory. It'll name it for me. I'm going to choose create. So there you go. That wasn't too hard. We just created a new employee directory page. It'll act just like a regular employee directory, and it'll show us employees. You'll notice there's a few things wrong, like this web part over here, the refinement web part's broken. We'll get to that. So here's step 2, configuring the default search results web part. So when I do the default search results web part, what I want to do is make sure that it behaves like I want it to behave. In other words, instead of showing up here with results only when I type in a search, I want it to show up all the time. So I'm going to choose to edit this page, and I'm going to augment the existing query quite simply by clicking Change Query. And then over here, I'm going to say, how about content class equals SPS people. If I test that query, it's going to bring back a whole bunch of people. That looks pretty good to me. So I'm going to choose OK. Scroll down to the bottom and choose OK. Might as well go ahead and check in this page in its current state. And now I'll see that without even adding any query, I get people results back. So that's a really good start for me. The next step is to upload the display templates. So there's a lot of different ways to do this. If you're in SharePoint Online, probably the safest way to do that is to navigate from your search page. You would navigate to you might be tempted to do Design Manager. I still find that avoiding Design Manager solves a lot of problems for me. And you would go into Master Pages and Page Layouts, and the documentation walks you through how to do this. My preferred way, particularly when I can open Explorer View, is to open Explorer View directly into the Master Page Catalog. So this is my on-prem environment, and right here I have my Display Templates folder. So if I want, one of the things that I can do is get right into the display, into the Master Page Gallery, and then create a new folder here. In this case, I'm just going to call this _ employee directory. This will keep my files separate from all of the other files. I'm going to click into the employee directory folder. I'm going to create a subfolder for my CSS file and another folder for my display templates. In my display templates, I'm going to create another folder for search. And now I've matched the folder structure from my downloads. So I can just come in here to my employee directory display template search. I can grab these two display templates, drag them and drop them in there. And I can do the same thing for my CSS. It's important that you keep these directory structures relatively the same, because the CSS file that we're looking for is going to be relative to our display templates directory. You can push them farther down, but this is how we have you do it in the document. All right, so our files are uploaded. So now we're on to the next step. So the next step is to simply change to our custom display template from the display template that we're currently using. So I'm going to return to my search center, and I'm going to go into the page that I created. So I got off that page intentionally because I want to show you that you can still navigate back to it even though you don't have a link to it. Just go into Site Contents and into Pages and find your employee directory again. So here we are on our page, and I'm going to edit this page, and instead of using that out-of-the-box display template, I'm going to edit the web part, and I'm going to change two display templates. The first is called the control template, and that's the one that surrounds all of the individual item display templates. And so in this case, under display templates, I'm going to choose the people search table control. And then down here for the individual results, I'm going to change that to use the people search table item. Those are the two that we just uploaded. So if I choose OK, what should happen is I should see the new rendering of my search results the way that I hope to see them. So this is our new look and feel that we'll be working with from now on. Since that's working, I'm going to go ahead and check it in. And I'm not going to publish it yet, but you'll notice that there is some JavaScript going on that actually detects that I have no A's, but I have B's, C's, and D's. I have no E, F, and G's. And so this is really cool script that works for us to make it happen. Okay, so we've changed to a custom display template. For those of you keeping score at home, this is what it looks like now, and yours may vary depending on the alphabetization of your last names. But for my demo set of characters there, these are the characters that I have. Now in Office 365, I have a different set of people, but you'll notice that the user interface is very much the same. So for Office 365, I use the upload technique, and for the SharePoint on-prem environment, I used the drag and drop technique. Now this is where things are going to start to get a little different because of the environments that I'm using. I'm using SharePoint 2013 and SharePoint Online. So for sorting and refinement, if you want to add refiners and sorting capability, then you're going to have a little different, you may have a different experience. This has been my experience. The first experience is the refinement web part totally explodes. And in fact, if you click show details, you'll notice it has this thing where it says site collection 2. I don't know what site collection 2 is, so I'm simply going to delete that web part and start over again. So I'm going to choose edit page, and I'm going to delete this web part. And then I'm going to add the web part back by clicking add web part, by going down to the search category and choosing the refinement web part. And lo and behold, look, it works. So we'll come back to that in just a second. The next thing that we want to do is add sorting. So I'm going to come in to edit the web part for the People Search core results. And down under settings, there is this show sort dropdown. Now, I don't want any of the default sorts. I want to use my own. And in our documentation, we recommend you use the first name, last name version. Now, you may want to be careful here and make sure that all of your quotes are actual quote characters and not those funky smart quotes. We fix that in the documentation, but if you have an older version, you may run into a problem. The other problem is it has to all be on one line. This is kind of a classic SharePoint problem. If you don't do this, sorting will not work and other JavaScript stuff will fail. So if you're having problems with sorting, check this out. That may be your problem. I'm going to choose apply. And what I get is a little sort box. The first thing I notice is that my JavaScript is still working. So that's a good sign. So we'll choose OK. And we will check in the page and let's test out the sorting. The first thing is that the default is first name A to Z. So I'm on the All tab and I notice it goes Bowie, Buckley, Cheyenne. So we're good to go. Now let's try it a different way. Let's try last name A to Z, and lo and behold, I have Brady and Calderon. So that's working as well. The next thing I want to do is add refinement. So refiners are managed properties that are configured to be refinable, and all you have to do to use them is edit the page, come over to the refinement web part, edit the web part, and then choose the refiners. So I'm going to get rid of all these default ones because they're not germane to what I'm trying to do, and I'm going to add back the ones that I need. The first one that I need is right here. It's department, and since it says department, it's going to show up as department. I don't need to change a thing. The next one I'm going to grab is job title. And that one I want to say job title, like that. And the next one I'm going to add is people keywords. So right here is people keywords. And that comes out of the user profile service. I'm just going to call it keywords. And the last one is going to be base office location. And I'm simply going to call this office location, like that. So that's all there is to it. Choose OK here, choose OK here, and you should see your refinable properties. So that's really all there is to it. It's super easy to use and configure the out-of-the-box refiners to be able to manage your refinement. So here I'm going to choose who's in search services and who is a search associate. And there you go. I have Raina and Smoke. So easy, easy, easy. The next one is a problem that I see all the time. And it's really, SharePoint's working the way it's supposed to work. It just doesn't exclude the service accounts. There's Ruby. It doesn't exclude the service accounts the way I would like. So I could solve this problem a number of different ways. But the easiest way for me, since I'm a search guy, is to solve it in search. Now, what am I talking about? Well, if I choose all here, you'll notice that as I scroll through, I'll run into a group of accounts that run SharePoint. Here's the unattended service account, here's the search crawl account, the SharePoint farm account, and the SharePoint web application account. Those are there because they have user profiles. You can go delete the user profiles, rerun the crawl, and I guarantee you that within a couple days, you'll start seeing those accounts again. So let's just get them out of search. How do we do that? Well, we're going to create a filter to exclude them, but the easiest way to figure out why that's happening is to crack open my favorite tool, which is the SharePoint Search Query tool. Now, when you fire up this tool, you're going to want to put in the address of your SharePoint site, and then when you run a query, like in my case, if I just run the query star, it's going to give me back results, and here are the primary results. But you'll notice these are sites and documents. That doesn't really help me. What I need to do is I need to hit on local SharePoint people results. So now if I run that query, I'm starting to see people. And that's what I want. So what I'm going to do is try to find those service accounts. And so I happen to know that if I kick this up to 50 results, and I scroll way down, I'll find here's the SharePoint Search Crawl account. That's a good example of what I'm looking for. And what I notice is that my administrators used a standard notation for their accounts. They used SRV underscore, and then in this case SP crawl. If I look at the unattended service account, that's SRV underscore SP unattended. So I'm going to take advantage of this SRV underscore. So now, if I look for the account name, and if that if that contains SRV underscore, then I'll be able to find the accounts that are service accounts. And so now what I can do is I can filter them out. And the way that you filter them out is you put a minus sign in front of that. And so what I'm going to do is create a query here for star minus account name SRV underscore star, and I'll run that. And now you'll see that I have just people in my results without those annoying service accounts. So let's go back to our search center. And let's go back into our search results page, and let's edit the page, and let's edit the web part, and let's change the query, and let's add to it that minus account name SRV underscore. Now this is just for my accounts, and you could, if you want, put a quote on here with DHT slash to make it even more specific that it's looking for that Doghouse Toy server. Now notice that there's 30 results here. Watch what happens when I test the query. Now there's 26. It took out four of those accounts. So I'm going to choose OK. I'm going to come back and I'm going to choose OK. I'm going to check in the page because we're at a really good place to just take a pause here. And now that I'm on the All tab, if I click through and I'm looking for those service accounts, I'm not going to find them. And that's kind of cool. So before I move on, let me also talk about how this works in SharePoint Online. If I go to my SharePoint Online site and I do the same thing, I'm just going to navigate through my search results looking for results that I don't like. Like here's one, SPO crawl. Guess what that's for? Let's go to another one. SPO app. So what I'm seeing is that they're prefaced with underscore SPO. So I'm going to create a query. I'm going to test it right here. So some of you may not have access to that search query tool. It's a free download. It's an awesome tool. But if you're not allowed to install or even download software, use the search center. I'm going to do a search for star, and then I'm going to do minus account name contains underscore SPO star. Let's try that query out. Let's see how it works. I click my way through. I'm looking at the results that I got. I'm not seeing any of those SharePoint accounts. So let's go ahead and use that. So I'm going to grab that query. We're going to edit our page. And you could continue to add additional queries if you wanted to. But in my case, I'm going to edit the web part. I'm going to change the query. And I'm just going to paste it right in there. And then I'm going to take out that star. So now test the query. Always test the query, make sure that it works. I went from 37 to 35 relevant results. That sounds like that's working to me. So now we have both our SharePoint Online environment and our SharePoint on-prem environment working the way that we expect. And so I'm going to go ahead and add the searchable or the sortable capability here, and then we'll start up again in a second. All right, what if you want to use your own custom user profile properties? Well, you're going to need to involve IT or whoever runs your SharePoint farm to do this, but it's not hard. It just requires administrative access to do this. So I'm going to go into Central Administration, and I'm going to go into Manage Service Applications down to my User Profile Service Application, and I'm going to choose Manage User Properties. In this case, what we're going to do is add a new property to associate with our cost center for our employees. Let's say that we're going to make this 40 characters long, and I'm going to make it optional, and I'm going to make it available to everyone, and I'm going to allow the users to edit it themselves, and I'm going to show it on the property pages, and I'm going to choose OK. So now if an end user goes to their user profile, they can easily add the property themselves. But just for grins, I'm going to go ahead and grab Ruby's user profile, and I'm going to add the cost center for her myself, just for testing. So here it is. She now has a user profile property with a cost center in it. Now the next thing I need to do, because these are search-based solutions, is I have to go into the search service application, and I have to kick off a full crawl of my people content source. This will sweep through the people content, and it will index that new property. And so I'll be back in just a second. Okay, so our crawl is complete, which means that I can now go into Search Schema, and I can create a new managed property called Cost Center. Now this is SharePoint on-prem, so I'm creating managed properties. I'm going to mark it as searchable, queryable, retrievable. I don't have to make it refinable unless you want to refine by cost center. That's entirely up to you. So for our case, I will go ahead and make it refinable. And then I have to map it. And so the mapping here is I'm going to map it to the SharePoint people cost center crawled property. There it is, crawled property. So we'll choose OK. And now I have a cost center. I now have a cost center managed property. But it's not populated with any data. In order to populate it with data, we have to do one more full crawl. Now, while that crawl is taking place, let me take a little aside and talk to you about Office 365. I went ahead and added that property to the user profile service. I went ahead and added a value to Adele's user profile so that she's all ready to go. But this is where the two environments differ the most. If I go into Manage Search Schema, because I can't kick off my own crawl, even if I go to Crawled Properties and I choose SharePoint People, I'm not going to see my crawled property. So there's no people cost center here. You have to wait unless you know a trick. So stick around for the end of the video. I'll show you a trick. Okay, so our crawl is completing, and now it's idle. And so now what we should be able to do is quite simply add a new managed property to our display template. Well, how do we do that? Well, it's actually easier than it sounds. All that you have to do is have the markup to be able to modify your display template. Thankfully, I have that. I'm going to come in here. I'm going to go into my display templates, into search, and I'm going to choose the item person table display template because that's where each individual person's results are shown. Now, always edit the HTML file. Don't edit the JS file unless you really know what you're doing. And so I'm going to go ahead and open this with code. And this is actually really simple. First thing we have to do is tell this display template about our new managed property. So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to copy this previous managed property, and then I'm just going to paste it to the end here. Make sure that you get the comma, and then I'm going to come over a Yomi display name, and I'm going to call this cost center. And we'll do the same thing here, cost center, and make sure that you have the comma here. Okay, now that tells the display template to pull the cost center data. I'm going to copy and create a new column for cost center. And then down here in the display template, I'm simply going to grab the context of the current item, cost center. I'm going to save this. It'll be saved back to SharePoint. SharePoint will then generate a new itempersonTable.js file. And then what I ought to be able to do is come back to my page and do a full refresh. And I should see that I have now a cost center column. And if I choose M for McDermott, I'll see that Austin Resources shows up for Ruby. And that's really all there is to it, to add a new property and then get it all the way into search. So step 8 is creating a better people name query rule. And this is a tip from Michael Svensson, a buddy of mine and just a great blogger, search. He does miraculous things with search. And he has a couple of really great tips in the guide, and this is one of them. Out of the box, when you search for somebody's name, I'm going to go back to the default people name query. So I'm going to do a search here. You've seen me search for Ruby and things like that. So let's go and search for Ruby. And you would think that I would get a Ruby hit, but I don't. The only way the out-of-the-box query rule works is if you actually know the person's full name, which is just silly because you don't need the person's full name. So what we're going to do is improve upon this query rule. So I'm going to go into Site Settings, and I'm going to go into Query Rules, and I'm going to create a new query rule on the local SharePoint results. We're going to choose Query Rule here, and we're going to call this New Query Rule, People Search on the Everything tab. I don't need a condition, so I'm going to choose Remove Condition, and then I'm going to create a result block. Now in the result block, we can have a title, so I'm going to call this People Results for, and then it's going to fill in the subject term that that the person specified. But I'm going to leave the query term just the way it is. And then I'm going to force them onto the local people results. So when you search for Ruby, it's going to search for Ruby. We'll go ahead and make it 3 people because I'm going to be optimistic there. And then if you expand the settings here, we can create a more link so that if they get more than 3 items, we can send them over to our new search results page. And so we created that search results page, and it was called Employee Directory. .aspx, and that takes a parameter of k equals. And then what you can do is just grab this subject terms and drop it in there. And actually, I guess I should have just copied that. But this will send them over to our new search results page. And then you have a couple of display options. I like using the people intent item because it's compact. And I'll show you what that looks like. So choose OK, and then choose Save. Now, before you do anything else, we don't want people to get confused. So I'm going to drop all the way down to the bottom here and find that lame one that comes out of the box, and I'm going to make that inactive. Now we can go back to our search results. We can search for Ruby. And look, here's Ruby, and Wiggin must have a reference to Ruby in his profile. So that's the smaller display template for people results. It's called the intent template. But if I search for search, I'll find a whole bunch of people that are involved in search. So it's showing me 3, and then it gives me my show more link. So if I click on that, it takes me over to my employee directory for everybody that has something to do with search. So here you see search services and things like that. And then I can refine down further if I want. For instance, if I'm just looking for a recovery associate, my gosh, there's Ruby McDermott. So I love that approach to creating a query rule because it gives you a broader query rule when you actually find somebody that you're looking for. All right. So one of the problems that you might run into when you're trying to implement this, depending on the version of SharePoint you're using, depending on the patch level that you're at, depending on your farm configuration, depending on a lot of things, is that the last name field for years in SharePoint was not sortable. So in SharePoint on-prem, you solve this by going into Search Schema, and you can solve this one of 2 ways. One way is to just search for the last name property, which is right here, last name, and edit the property and make it sortable just by changing that from no to yes active. Once you choose OK to save that change, then you'll nearly positive you need to do a full crawl to make sure that that gets picked up. Now, the other option you have is that you can create a new managed property, and we'll call this one last name sort or something like that. And then you can go through and make it searchable and queryable, and you can make it sortable, and then come down here and add the mapping just like you did from the last name fields before. And in this case, there are 2 fields that you want to choose. You want to choose the last name field, which is right here. And then you also want to choose the people, and it's SPS phonetic last name. Okay, so you want both of those to be in the search box like that. And then you want to include the content from the first crawled property that's not empty. So if last name is full, great, it's going to show up. Otherwise, this phonetic last name will fill in its place. So this is important because as you go through and look at the refinable properties, the sortable properties, if you want to be able to sort, I said refine, I meant sort, you'll be able to do that. And so this is a really good tip. You choose OK, of course, but I'm not going to do that because I don't need it. Now, what about in Office 365? Well, in Office 365, the challenge you're going to have there is that you don't get to create sortable properties. So what you're going to do is you're going to find a property that you can use to populate. And what I do is I type REFINABLES for string, and this shows me all of the available refinable string properties. And notice that these properties are sortable. Okay, so you would choose refinable string and you would edit it and then go through those same steps for this because this one is marked as refinable. Now, if we look in the managed properties for Office 365 and we choose last, we see that last name is now sortable. And that was a modification they made sometime in the last year or so. And so that's not a problem in Office 365. All right, so we have our systems running for SharePoint on-prem. But what about SharePoint Online? Well, there is still this one extra issue where you just have to wait and wait and wait for your user profiles to get indexed, which is really annoying. So this is where Michael comes to the rescue again. I'm going to show you how to use his code to trigger a profile reindex in SharePoint Online. If you go to the article, we reference his GitHub site, which is github.com, wubba, W-O-B-B-A. And on his site, you'll find SPO trigger reindex. And you're going to want the reindex users script. So just come over here to raw, copy the whole thing, and paste it into PowerShell. I'm going to use the PowerShell ISE because it gives me some nice syntax highlighting, so I can show you a few of the things that you're going to want to watch out for. If you haven't already downloaded either the PowerShell commandlets for SharePoint PnP or the PowerShell commandlets from Office 365, or you're running this on a SharePoint box, then you won't have the DLLs. And so you need to download the SharePoint client runtime to be able to do that. Now, in my case, I got the client runtime because I downloaded the SharePoint PnP PowerShell. And what you'll need to do is just make sure that this CSOM path, which is Michael has set here for a SharePoint 2016 SharePoint server, just make sure that that points locally. So in my case, I'm not running it on a SharePoint server. I don't need to. It's client, so I can run it anywhere I like, and this is where my DLLs are. Once you've done that, all you have to do is create a reference to your site, which in this case is the admin side of my demo site. And then I'm going to pass in my username, but of course, since I'm scripting, I'm not going to pass in my password. That's going to get referenced. So here we go. We're going to run the script, and it's going to start off by popping up an advertisement for this amazing tool, the SharePoint Online Search Toolbox by Michael's company, PuzzlePart. This is a great tool for being able to view your SharePoint Online crawl logs, being able to reindex your content, and things like that. If you minimize the dialog, it'll ask you for your password. In my case, it's... And then I'm going to let the code run. And what it's going to do is start making requests of my SharePoint environment. And what it's actually doing is it's updating user profiles so that the last modified timestamp gets set to now. And that way, when the SharePoint Online crawler comes through, it's going to look for those items to be re-indexed. So now what we have to do is now we have to wait. Okay, so about 30 minutes has passed. A little less, about 20 minutes has passed. And what I'm going to do now is go into Search Schema and go to Crawled Properties. And then change this to People and put in Cost for Cost Center. And there's my crawled property. So now I can map it to a managed property, a refinable managed property if I want it refinable, otherwise just a string managed property. And I can start building out my user interface just like it says in the documentation. This is a very, very powerful script. It does a great job of making our lives as search experts easier because we're able to control now when these properties show up. So obviously the best thing to do would be add all of the properties you need added and then come back and run Michael's script one time to be able to get them into the crawled properties so that they can then be mapped to managed properties. Really powerful script. Just awesome, awesome work by Michael for the community. All right, so that is it. We now have in our in our search center the ability to find people, be able to click my way through and find the users. The last thing I want to do is I want to publish my search pages. Also, please do not forget to go back into site settings, go back into master pages and page layouts into the employee directory and publish your templates, your display templates. So I'm publishing a major version of each of those. Once that's done, I'm going to come down and publish a major version of this one, because right now they'll only show up for me until everything's published. So you should see that it says unpublished this version. That'll tell you that it is published. Now that's for the display templates, but you also have to publish the CSS. So publish this, and now you're all set. You should be able to search, you should be able to find, and then when you're if you're looking for that more page, you should be able to see the more page, and in the more page you should be able to go and find people. So there you go. This was a great effort by folks in the community to put this together for you all. I hope this video helps you get it done faster with fewer errors.